Alright, this is video number 2, well not video number 2, part 2 of second criterion, finding the anaerobic threshold. So we have our two graphs, our VE-VO2 versus VE-VCO2, and we have our PET-O2 and PET-CO2. Both of those were placed according to the point where VO2 was. So this is, for example, the PET-O2 level at a VO2 of 1.8 or so. Okay. Now, what you want to do, if you haven't done so, go ahead and the primary axis is the PET-O2. Go ahead and click on the primary axis if you're 0 to 120 and limit that to 90 to 120. Okay. We created a secondary axis for PET-CO2. I already showed you how to do that. So you'll know how to do that. For the CO2, don't scale it. You can just leave it at 0 to 50. Okay? So there we have our two graphs. Now, if we look back at our Word document, we are looking for the point in the VE-VO2 where the VE-VO2 and PET-O2 begin to increase. Okay, so let's look at that first. Alright, VE-VO2 is going to be the blue here. Where does that begin to really increase? I would say right about here. It's kind of sporadic, okay, so it's a little bit difficult to tell, but we're going to go ahead and insert a line where you think it is. So let's take an arrow, and I'm thinking it's pretty consistent up until right about here where it starts to shoot off. So I'm going to draw my line right about there. Alright, now we might change that because we're looking for two things here. Okay, we're looking for where VO2 starts to increase and also where PET-O2 starts to increase. Now, if we look at PET-O2, this is the blue here, where it really starts to increase is going to be right about here. Okay, you can see kind of increasing exponentially right there. So let's go ahead and insert another line. Let's do the arrow, and I'm thinking, okay, increasing pretty linearly, and then right here is where it starts to shoot up. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line right about there. Now, one thing we can do to help us out just a little bit, because it's kind of difficult to do this just by eyeballing when the values are so different. We can actually place the graphs on top of each other, not on top of each other, but above one another, like so. Make sure that the scales are similar. So crop that down a little bit. Let's get rid of the line for now. Alright, so again, we're looking for where VE-VO2 and PET-O2 increase. So VE-VO2 starts to increase right about here, and PET-O2 starts to increase right about here. Yep, looks like right about there. So let's go ahead and take one arrow and kind of meet in the middle where we think it's going to start increasing. I'm going to say right about here, and we'll draw that all the way down to right about there. And let's make sure that this scale is up to par here. Okay, so it's looking about even. That's at about 3.5. Okay, let's move it over a little bit, see what we get. It's pretty consistent right there. So I think I'm going to stick with about 3.5 right here. So you see how it changed from 4 to 3.5 when we looked at the two together. We saw, okay, fairly consistent here, and then it really starts to spike up. You can use those two values on top of each other. That'll help you out a little bit. So this one's kind of tough to do, especially if you don't have clean values. What you need to do is basically just do your best with what you have, okay? If your values are kind of all over the place, then you can only do with what you got. And obviously, if I had a little bit of trouble going between 3.5 and 4 on this one, I don't expect you to get it exact, especially if the data are not as clean and as nice as this one.